Welcome to the Level Up Life, Muscle and Mindset Mastery podcast that lifts your spirits, stretches your thinking, and occasionally pulls a hamstring of humor. Haha. Don't worry, we've got ice packs, protein shakes, and a whole lot of redemption. I'm your host, a former felon turned fitness coach, proving you can trade bars for barbells and addiction for ambition. Today I'm joined by someone who knows that road to recovery all too well, Pat Patterson from Blue Water Recovery Outreach Center. Welcome, Pat. Thank you. Grateful you decided to join. We met back in, 2017?
2017, 2018, yeah. Played a lot of softball back there. Thanks for having me on your show again. Good to see you.
Absolutely, man. It's good to be seen, right?
Yeah, it
Yep.
is for sure.
Yeah, so those games back then, I remember they got pretty heated. Vision Quest versus Midland Recovery Team.
That was like Boston versus the Yankees in recovery softball.
Yep.
We were first and second in every league and every tournament we played in. That was so much fun.
Oh yeah.
Going back and forth, the battles between first and second and home runs and
Yep.
those tournaments going all the way to the evenings.
Mm-hmm.
Those are awesome. So, softball tournaments in the summertime are a lot of fun, and it's a good outlet for those in recovery from addiction.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember those days. It's just super competitive. And then I love the fact that after the game, no matter how the game went, everyone came together, hugs, and we're brothers and sisters in recovery at that point.
Mhm. Well, saying the Serenity Prayer together and saying the Lord's Prayer, all in unity, all hugging one another, is something really special.
Yeah, I agree. So let's talk about Blue Water Recovery Outreach Center. I want to hear a little bit about what you've built down there. And also I want to hear about, since we were on the softball topic, you do a people in recovery versus the police, because there's a lot of stigma around people. I think just, for people in recovery about the police, and then for the police about, people in recovery. I think it's both ways. And I want to hear about what you're doing to kind of break those barriers.
Sure. Well, Adam and I met in 2017, 2018 playing softball, and I was very early on in my recovery. And my journey began maybe around 2012. I started taking prescription painkillers. And at the time, I lived in Clarkston, Michigan, and I worked in the 401k business. I lived on the Pine Knob Golf Course, had season tickets to Michigan football, 30-yard line, row one. Life was great. And it snowballed really quick. What those did to my life in a very short time period just completely wrecked my life. So I started taking prescription painkillers, and probably 2 a week. I remember I started taking them for work because they remove my, they're designed to remove my physical pain, but what they did for me was remove my emotional pain. So if I was working in the 401k business, I had to do a lot of group presentations, and then I had to report to the CEO. So I was involved in a lot of executive meetings, and if I took a prescription painkiller, it removed my ability to feel. So I go into boardrooms and talk to whoever I wanted to and have all the confidence in the world. And that just snowballed into, I like the way that this makes me feel. It takes my emotional pain away. So 2 a week led to 2 a day, and then that led to 4. And then all of a sudden I started withdrawing one day and not understanding really what that means. And then I got a prescription for them. And fast forward a year later, I run out of my prescription early, and somebody says, well, I can offer you heroin for $20. And I thought I would never take that ever in my life. It's the one drug I will never take until I feel horrible, like absolute horrible. And then I do the worst thing on the planet, and I take heroin, and I couldn't turn back the clock. A $20 yes was the worst decision I had ever made. And then I became an IV user, lost my job. I started up my own business. I lost that, and then within fast forward a very short time period, I ended up being homeless on the streets of Flint, where I lived on and off at the Carriagetown shelter and the Grand Traverse Recovery House, and would relapse and fumble and go to the sober house, stay the night or two in an abandoned house, and then back to a shelter for a little short stay until I get kicked out again. And just that fumbled around. I went to treatment centers 4 times. It was a miserable time in my life, and I really just couldn't escape my addiction. And I came to the point where my way out was to try to kill myself. I had just become such a shame and a shell version of what I had used to be. I was always a believer in community and just helping other people. It was the way I was raised. I loved it. I loved being a part of the youth group at church when I was a kid, to being homeless on the streets and asking 30 people for $1 was the way I lived my life.
Just so you could
And
not feel sick, right?
yeah,
Your
yep, that was it.
your
I knew if I
story,
asked 30 people for $1, I'd get $20, and then I could go feel normal.
yeah, like a lot of what you're saying, I can relate. And I had someone once tell me, Adam, don't compare, just relate. And there's parts of my story that are different from yours. Uh, but I can when you're talking about, waking up in an abandoned house, I didn't necessarily wake up in an abandoned house, but I woke up dope sick with that feeling like I wish the world would be a better place without me in it. And I don't want to feel like this anymore. So I feel like as you're telling your story, I'm there with you, man, going through
Oh,
my own stuff.
that sickness is the worst feeling in the world, having that sickness all over my body. And I just couldn't escape it. And no, I don't want to use. Nobody wants to take more, as you know. It's a horrible feeling, but eventually, you get to a place where money is an issue, and somebody says there's a way to do it cheaper, and you get more out of it, which is being an IV user and shooting heroin. And I started shooting heroin at that point. I'm not sure if you did or not,
Oh
but
yeah, yep, I
it's
did.
that's a horrible journey in and of itself. Just the horrors of being on the streets as a user. What you do with um, how to get it, how to, the needles and all the stuff that go along with it is just it's a bad experience, man. I remember just, being in an apartment and waking up with a needle like right next to my eyeball, meaning I had to shoot it and fall over right on my face and then wake up 4 hours later with that thing, you know,
Yeah,
like just the stories. And that was just another day. That was like one day. So
yeah,
it was just, I got so tired of that. I ended up buying 4 grams of heroin and put it in 7 needles and just said, you know what? Today I'm going to die. I am overdosing, and I am super excited about this
right.
because I get to finally break free of this, terrible addiction. And I tried really hard. I would try as hard as I could to intentionally overdose and die, and I couldn't. And every time I would, push it all the way in, I would wake up about 8 hours later with half a needle in my arm, and I wasn't dead. And I would try again, and I kept just, trying to kill myself for about 2 days. That process just repeated itself. I'm just trying to do an intentional overdose, and I couldn't do an intentional overdose. Um, and then I did it with 6 needles, and in the seventh one, I just left there, and I walked to the McLaren Hospital in downtown Flint and checked into a psych ward for a week. Told them I was trying to kill myself for the last 2 days, and I couldn't die. And then I remember I got out of there and relapsed right away. It wasn't the end, but that was the beginning of the end. 6 months later, I found myself in a recovery house for the first time out in Port Huron, and I got a job at the Meyer gas station and joined a softball team called the Vision Quest softball team, and the friendship and the connections that were born there saved my life. And I began the process of healing and restoring my life all over again. Um, got a pedal bike because I lost my driver's
Yep.
license, of
Yep. I
course.
can relate to
Rode my
that too.
bike
Yep.
back and forth to Meyer gas station every day and making 10.50 an hour. But that was the very important journey of surrendering. The walk that you have to have in recovery starts with surrendering and humility. And I had to surrender everything. And it didn't matter what job it was, I had to do this and gain as much humility as I could in my step um, for healing because it was a complete cleanse of my entire body, not just with drugs, but in my attitude, my behaviors, and the way I operated my life. Uh,
Perspectives too on how you look at things. I know that was a big one for me.
yeah.
Uh,
Blaming others to what role did I play in this?
yeah. So I actually, my story kind of similar. Ended up overdosing, but when you talk about that surrender, there's one moment in my head that always pops up as like that moment that everything changed, and I had that willingness. My willingness was born. It was in Midland County Jail. I was talking to my bunkie, complaining about the police and the paramedics reviving me just to charge me with a felony. And I realized how crazy I sounded. This was like 3 weeks after I had used last. So right at that moment was like that I still wanted it, and I was incarcerated, so I couldn't get to it. So I still wanted it, but then I realized that I don't want that life. Uh, so I literally dove in, surrendered, like you said, and did everything that people suggested to me. And I went through in treatment. I remember I had a bunch of resentments that I was holding on to for no reason. So I had to unpack that stuff. Once I unpacked that stuff, I felt kind of hollow. So, few special books that I read and, some awesome people that kind of guided me, got me to a point where I was like, okay. And 2017, I was a free man living in, well, not free. I was in recovery court, but that program helped save my life. That's
Yeah.
when we met, I'm pretty certain I was in recovery court still. So it was in my probably first year.
Well, congratulations, man.
Yeah,
Look
you
at all
too.
your success you've had now,
Look at
starting your
you.
business and working. You're obviously heavy into fitness
Hmm.
and started that's no easy business. So good
It is
job
not.
and kudos to you.
Thank you.
Yeah. What year did you start your business?
I started, my first client was December 11th, 2017.
Oh, is that right?
Yep. I was working at an RV park that had a gym, started taking clients, and basically built it one client at a time. And it's
Mm.
evolved over the years, man. We could talk a ton about that and how, as a business owner, I've had to, like you were talking uh, earlier, was just evolve, learn new skills, right? I'm going through a process right now, early in my podcasting days, and kind of getting a feel for it. And, you know, it's scary. Anything we do is scary, but I've learned to embrace that discomfort and really dive in, right? Because why not? If I fail, I'm going to learn something along the way. So now let's take a moment to thank our sponsors, Pine Haven Assisted Living. At Pine Haven Assisted Living, they believe in making every resident feel at home. Nestled in the peaceful countryside of Hemlock, Michigan, they offer compassionate care in a family-like environment where residents can enjoy independence with the support they need. Registered nurse-owned and operated, their team provides personalized care, home-cooked meals, and a range of activities to ensure your loved ones continue to live a fulfilling life. They also have alpacas and llamas on site to enrich the lives of their residents. Experience the warmth and comfort of Pine Haven. Call them today at 989-295-6632. That's 989-295-6632. Or you can visit them on their website at pinehavenassistedliving.com. That's pinehavenassistedliving.com for more information. Now, back to the Level Up Life.
3 things I have to do every day to maintain my sobriety and business is rigorous authenticity, surrender the outcome, and do uncomfortable work. So you're not...
You see my shirt?
What's that say? Unapologetically authentic.
Yep.
Oh, man.
Yep.
That's great. You have to be rigorous with your authenticity and surrender the outcome and do uncomfortable work. So you not knowing how to do podcasts and just jumping in is uncomfortable work.
Mm-hmm.
But that's how I maintain my sobriety, and that's how we run a business. We
Yep.
have to, sometimes submit proposals or recommendations or whatever those are to survive. Some of our lifeline is the result of that proposal is very important to the sustainability of our organization.
Yeah.
But we have to surrender the outcome and do uncomfortable work. So I don't like to do necessarily interviews and podcasts, but I know it is vital to the advocacy efforts for recovery from addiction, that we have a voice, and more importantly, a unified voice of lived experience. People not just advocating for recovery, but those that have also been through the trenches, sometimes have a unique perspective on what that solution might be. And so it's very important that we all sort of tap into what those solutions might be and sort of come at this from a unified front from across the state.
Absolutely. 100% agree. So tell me a little bit about, what do you guys do where you're at? You're executive director, correct?
Yep. I'm the executive director of BWROC, the Blue Water Recovery and Outreach Center, which is a nonprofit recovery community organization, an RCO in Port Huron, Michigan. We help those seeking recovery from addiction in the Blue Water area through one-on-one recovery coaching, recovery events, recovery support groups, and transportation. So we do 28 support groups a week. We have about 392 people per week that come through our building. We have about 30 new people, 20 to 30 new people a month. We get about 600 phone calls per month for help or the continuation of help. And we did 4,100 transportations for recovery services last year. So those that lose their license now, they need a ride to a support group, or they need a ride to get their driver's license back, or they need a ride. So we're just that resource arm, that helpful aid. And we exist by existing in the gaps, which at the time, there wasn't all of these sort of in the gap sort of organizations. But when I went through, I realized all the things that I needed that weren't there. And we spent a lot of time looking at a blank wall to say, where are some gaps that we could help provide services for today that didn't exist, without duplicating the normal efforts. The normal efforts are, inpatient treatment for 3 weeks or 28 days. So we weren't going to be an inpatient rehab center. We weren't going to do IOP. We weren't going to be recovery housing. They already existed. But how can we sort of be the connection and the conduit to all of that? And so we started up an RCO to work on that sort of side of things. So we serve as an integral, really navigation system to existing services that already were there and ones that weren't there, we provide.
That's huge because I know in recovery, when you don't have a ride somewhere, you're new in recovery. Maybe this individual you know from your past can give you a ride, but are they really good for you to be around? Right. So you have to choose between, like, you know, that positive activity. Maybe it's intensive outpatient. Maybe it's a recovery function and you don't have any way to get there. It's so what you guys are doing is huge because the more I know for me in my early recovery, the more I stayed away from the people that were still using, the more I set myself up for success in the future.
Yeah. You know, we in around here we call that recovery capital.
Yep.
And that's sort of like the opposite of an addiction is not necessarily sobriety, but human connection. So
Hmm.
when we get around people and we do things like the softball was so vital for the lifeline of my survival, we just try to create those environments. We can't obviously force people for into recovery. They have to have their own willingness. But if we were to create better atmospheres for their survival that they would grab onto, for instance, it's 2:25 right now. At 5 o'clock, we have family dinner at BWROC. We do it every Monday. It's about 50 to 70 people come in recovery. And that's a nice, soft little sponge to recovery. And I'm not really sure I want to do all that. Well, why don't you come to family dinner and just break bread with us for a little bit? Because you know what, in today's world, people just eat. They don't
Yep.
sit down and have dinner anymore. So
Hmm.
we started family dinner about a year ago, and we have family dinner now every Monday. And but that's the human connection element. But it's a very such an important part of the social atmosphere. As they say, addiction's a disease of isolation. So when we played softball, I looked forward to our softball tournaments all week. Or if they were a month out, I would wait we practiced every other day. So it was just the only thing I had at that time. I had lost everything else in my life. So softball was just such an important element in my own journey, but other people have, other things, but there's got to be something. I can't sit on my couch and just expect that, oh, I'm gonna all of a sudden be healed and I don't have to drink or take, any substances anymore. No, there's work that's got to be put into this, real work. And I gotta cleansing myself means what role did I play in this? It means, understanding my own behavior traits. It means evaluating, what are my character defects and, how do I make an amends? How do I make a list of the people that I've harmed during all of this? And how do I start to, take daily inventory and understand, the role I played in all of these situations or arguments or people that I have mistreated or frustrated or behaved, to earn trust again takes work. It takes consistency. It doesn't just happen by, oh, hey, guess what? I'm in recovery now, so everything should be good. No, they're all pissed off
Yep.
about the way you treated them in the past, and respect is earned. It's not given, and that's earned by consistency of repeated behaviors over time. So if it's something small, like a phone call, you say you're going to call somebody at 5 o'clock, you have to make that phone call at 5 o'clock every time you commit to doing something like that to regain trust
Yep.
because you broke it.
Be reliable.
I should say, not you, me.
Right. Right.
I,
And I know for me, a huge component was the accountability. And you said, I think, I can't remember exactly how you worded it, but you said to cleanse yourself. I can't remember exactly how you worded it, but automatically my brain was like, that's accountability. And for me, I had to accept this. My life is in shambles right now. And it's because of choices I made. Uh, once I got addicted to the drugs, it wasn't as much of a choice. It was more of survival at that time. But a lot of I took accountability for the stuff I did all across that time frame. And once I got the shovel out, dug through all my wreckage, I realized I am the one that created all of this. But I also at the same time it gave me a tremendous amount of power, because if I created all of that, I have the power to change my future. So that's where I really, I started visualizing, what do I want in my future? What do I want my career to be? What fills my cup? What's my purpose? Right. And it's just to help people. And that could be simply opening the door at the gas station. It can be sending that guy a text back about, a question he had about his fitness. Uh, and what you're doing there, filling in the gaps, I think it's this same sort of mission, right? Uh, like that dinner, I try and think of myself back in my using days, and having that Monday dinner might have been something that I looked forward to that kept me from going back out, because I might have been sitting there thinking like, I really want to get high, but if they don't see me at this dinner, they're gonna call me because I've been there the last 8 weeks. So it's just that community accountability that makes a huge difference.
So tell me about your business. Are you
Yeah, so we do in-person training. I've hired other trainers. We do in-person training. We're in the process of a more uh, in-depth online version of what we already do, but we do what's called hybrid. So it's a combination of in-person workouts, and I could program you into the app. 5-day routine that includes cardio, nutrition, and we wouldn't even have to see each other. So we could communicate through text, and I could guide you on a fitness journey that way. And what I've really built this around is I want it to be as convenient as possible for the individual, because we're so busy. Everybody's so busy all the time. So if we can make fitness convenient, and maybe you were hiring me and you said, Adam, I have 15 minutes 4 days a week. What can I do? I can build you a program. It doesn't have to be an hour. It doesn't have to be 2 hours at the gym. It's just like with recovery. You just got to start, right? You just got to start digging. You got to start making changes. So, and I think to a level, the success I've had with personal training has been that a lot of people who come to me, not everybody, but a lot of people have similar struggles, whether it be food addiction, or they may be using food as a coping mechanism, gambling, other negative habits that don't include any sort of chemical substance. So the fact that I am upfront and I recover out loud, I think people can relate on the core, the principles of kind of what I've been through on some level, right? It goes back to that relate, don't compare. And I just think that the ability to connect with people's really made an impact on not only their fitness, but their quality of life.
well, physical fitness and just health in general is such an important part of our world. At one, healthcare is expensive,
Mm-hmm.
and not taking care of yourself is costly.
Yep.
I'm currently at going back to school right now at the in the School of Public Health. So we talk about it every day. Just not just being physical, but what does it take to improve, cardiovascular health? I can't even say the
Right. Yeah.
word. Right now, I think like a third of our world struggles with cardiovascular disease.
Oh yeah.
How do we reduce it from 33% to 25%? And, the United States spends most amount of money in any country on healthcare, and we have poor outcomes. So how do we get to a place where we're improving that a little bit? And so I study other countries and do analysis on what other countries are doing that are successful in their world, what's working with the United States. It's not like we're horrible. We have great technology. We have medical advances all over, but price is expensive in the United States. So maintaining good health is important, but hard to do sometimes. Good healthcare, you got to take care of yourself, and that includes recovery. And so,
Well, and you talk health, just health in general. I have a way of looking at my past where I'm like, so all these years that I was using drugs, alcohol, I was withdrawing from my future. So I think of life as like, you worked in finance, maybe you'll like this. So did drugs, all this stuff, withdrawing from my future. So every time I go in and work out, I think of it as going to the bank, depositing money, because I'll never know. I'll never know if it helps, but I will know that what I'm doing right now, exercising, lifting weights, doing what I do for my physical body, I know that I'm doing everything to add to the end where when I'm on my deathbed, and I've thought about it, when I'm on my deathbed, I'm going to sit there and be like, I did everything I could. I ate good. I exercised. I moved my body, took care of my heart. I did everything I could to make it to where I'm at now, and I'll smile because of that. But I don't withdraw from the bank of life anymore like I used to.
yeah. No, well, you're quite the spirit of hope over there.
Yeah, you too, man.
Thanks.
Uh, thank you. Thank you. I'm grateful you came on, man. I feel like I
Mhm.
could sit down and talk to you for another 2 hours, just about
Well,
everything you guys are doing there and what you've been up to. So,
I appreciate it. I think what we're doing here is something that's important, but we want to have this spread across Michigan, so we've got opioid funding that has come to the state of Michigan, $1.5 billion across the state. And I was appointed by the Speaker of the House as the Vice Chair of the Michigan Opioid Advisory Commission. And our job is to provide advice to our legislators on spending opioid settlement dollars. So we're trying to advocate for additional support and lived experience space. Not to say that anything done in the past is bad, but complementary to what the clinical approach or what they've done in the past to what we're doing today, I think is the future of recovery. So it's less clinical, more lived experience, more peer-to-peer support, more RCO development, working with technical support and technical assistance to prop up some RCOs. And imagine a world where every community has a thriving RCO and recovery house in it. That seems like a pretty good ecosystem for success in the recovery space. So we're not there, and I don't have everybody believing in that philosophical approach. But I believe it's a step in the right direction. And let's utilize we have a one-time opportunity to spend opioid settlement dollars. Let's put them in gaps in efficient areas that, it doesn't make any sense to spend money where money's already going with Medicaid. So let's find areas in services that people are doing that are working and don't have a whole lot of financial support.
love it, man. Well, thanks again for being on. And to all of our viewers, audience, listeners, thank you for tuning in. And until next time,